Okay, good morning everyone. So today I'm just going to have a quick stream to just run through how I've integrated Yarn Spinner into my current project. So for those of you that don't know what Yarn Spinner is, it's this fantastic dialogue extension that lets you do like branch narratives and that sort of thing. It's created by the Secret Lab, and I will put a link to the GitHub in the chat. So if you're doing any sort of dialogue for your game, definitely worthwhile checking out. So let's get into it basically. I'll give you a quick run through of my project of currently how it looks. It is very prototypey at the moment, so ignore that. Make it a bit bigger too. There we go. Alright, so we got little motion capture man running around here. Into the town we've got a couple of different NPCs that we can see. The little sphere just lets us know that they're interactable. So once we get to a certain distance we can interact with them. Once we're there we'll go interact. And all of the dialogue and the avatars and everything like that is driven by the Yarn Spinner. So from here we can talk. Hello, good morning Mr. Green Man, how are you today? Absolutely fantastic. How about yourself? And here we have options. So I've opted to put in like a radial manual, similar to Mass Effect and other sort of RPGs like that as well. I'm a big fan of the radial options. So here we can choose what branch of the dialogue we can go through. So let's go, yes, we're feeling pretty super, thanks for asking. NPC responds, wow, that is fantastic. And I've just realized, oh no, I'll take that back. I thought I was muted there for a minute. Thanks very much there, Mr. Zero Die. Alright, so yeah, we're talking through. That is fantastic. Thank you there, Mr. Green Man. And thanks for the chat. We can now also go to the other NPC over here and have a chat to him as well. And you'll see different avatars, even different colors on their borders. And the chat continues. Hey, yes, I'm just testing this out. This is very cool. Are you getting the hang of it? And I think I am, maybe not quite sure. Now the other thing that I might go back into the dialogue and skip through here. If I choose this option, another thing that I've implemented is emotions. So when you run a line of dialogue, you can display via the avatar the emotion the character is feeling. So when I choose this emotion here, we'll notice that we're getting a different avatar for the NPC. Alright, so let's dig into a little bit of the code in my Unity project and we'll see what's going on behind the scenes. So I have this dialogue actors here. This is a scriptable object I've created, and this purely is just a list of all of the speakers in the game that will have a custom set of avatars. As we can see on the side, I'll magnifier up. Remember how to use it. Okay. So here we can see that we've got NPC, player, and then a default actor. So when the string for the dialogue passes and it doesn't recognize that there is a name in this list of actors, it will use the default actor. So this is going to be handy for just a generic NPC because there's going to be quite a few in the game and you don't want to have so many individual sprites times the 5 or 6 emotions that we're going to have as well. So in this list, we have neutral, happy, sad, excited, angry, and these are going to be the different like avatars that are going to display their emotions. Also have a text color. So if this particular character should stand out in some way, this text color can be a unique color that will really stand out in the dialogue. Okay, we'll dig into the code. Okay, so this is the UI dialog. This script here will basically just drive the dialogue sequence. What it does, first of all, is it grabs a line, and a line is a yarn spinner line. So, like I said, if you haven't checked it out, go to the GitHub, grab it down, and spin up the test project. What it will then do is pass that line into a dialogue chunk. And let's have a look what that is. So this dialogue chunk will pass the name of the actor, the line of dialogue that it's going to be talking about, as well as the emotion that line of dialogue should convey. And how it does that is basically splits a line, gets the name, the first part before the semicolon. Anything after that will be the line of text that it should display. What it will then do is check if there is an emoji on the end, and they're just a simple 2-character, smiley face, sad face, angry face, and so on. And if it does find that there is an emoji on the end of the string, it will pass through and say, yes, there is an emotion. If the emotion is invalid, meaning that there is none, or it's just the neutral, it'll just default back to this neutral emotion. Then it will trim it off the end down here, just so that it doesn't show up on the text when the game is playing. Okay, so now that that's passed, it comes through and it determines the actor. It determines what sort of data it should set, such as the emotion avatars, the name, and also the text color here. Now, the cool part here is the typing text. So what this, as you can see in the game, each character is sort of like a typewriter, just typed as you go. And that's a variable speed we can set in the options. If the player presses the interact key while it's typing, it will sort of dismiss all of the typing part and then finish the line straight away, so you don't have to wait for the text to finish. And then the second interact hit will finish the line. It will go into the next text line. So once that's done, if the dialogue comes up into an option will... options. Here we go. Now the options are the radial menu that shows you how many options that you can branch off to in the dialogue, and I've got them set as the radial menu. So when options come up on the screen, it sends them through to this method here, and it will go into the set options. So it will pass all of the options available for this portion of text into set. Now this is a pretty interesting function here, so I might take my time here to explain it a little bit better. When we split it up, we need to talk radians, because that's the math that Unity will use for determining the semicircle and so forth. So that's what this part does, is we're splitting it in half because we're only working with the semicircle, we're only working with the top half, and then we're dividing that by how many options we have. So if there's only 2, it's going to split that semicircle right down the middle. Then down here, what we want to do is we want it to start not at the start of the angle, but we want it to start in the midpoint of that section. To explain that a little bit better, I've got this little diagram here. So if we split this semicircle into 2 parts, our options will be one on the left, one on the right. Where we want the text to display is not right to the far left and far right, but rather the middle of this slice of pie. So to do that, we split that in the middle. And then when we move our our little cursor around, we can see it sort of spin around like that. So that just, it's a more user-friendly way to go. Otherwise, if we were going to split this directly into two, we'd have one on the far right there, and then one directly above, and then nothing on the other end of the semicircle. And it would look a little bit odd to have two options and then this big void over the side here. Alrighty, then we got a little bit of math. This basically is going to determine the rotation angles. So if we can have a numerous amount of options. This isn't just limited to a set layout. So we can have 2, 3, 4, 5, however many. Yeah, it might get a bit ugly if we throw any more than 4 or 5 options, but it's possible. Okay, here we go. We set the value, normalize it so that we can get that selector distance again. I'll bring that back up. We've had a look at that just a bit. Okey-dokey. All right, so this this little red dot here, that's the selector. So that's where it determines what option we're going to choose. We also need a normalized value so that we can set the actual options themselves, so that we can place them around the sphere. Okay, and that's pretty much what we're doing here. So this part here is instantiating the option prefabs themselves. So the actual line of text for the option and the backgrounds. Now, I've got 3 different types set up. One for the left, one for the right, and one for the middle. Really, the only difference between them all is like the justification of the text. So we want it justified to the left if it's on the right if it's the left, and then in the middle if it's on the top. The other thing that we want is to adjust the pivot of the actual object itself. I'll show you why. It's just a small little thing, but it makes a big difference on the look. It's just my wife there opening the window. It sounds like a truck running down the street. She also thinks it's really funny to poke faces at me. Hiding. Right. Okay. So you can see here the pivot is on the very bottom in the middle. If the pivot was anywhere else and this object was sitting over here, and the pivot was on, say, the far left, it would look a bit funny if it was in the middle like that. So we need to mathematically set the pivot just so it looks a bit nicer. And when we're in game, yes, Zero Day says, "Hello, wife. Yours does that too, huh?" He just gets told to be quiet. Yes, I get the whole "you're keeping me up, time to go to bed" thing as well. Okay. Here we go. Okay, so the buttons. So for this one, you can see that the pivot's pretty much in the middle here. how many options do we have on the other one? Maybe I'll continue that. Yeah. Jump. Okay, so this one probably be a better example actually. Here we go. Okay, so we notice that the pivot is more towards the bottom here, and for that reason, if the pivot was closer to the top, it would look a little bit odd. If it was down like that, and there was more options on the sphere there, so it's just more of a aesthetic spacing thing, and how we determine that is just with the smooth step. So a smooth step's a very neat little function to basically interpolate between 0 and 1 spherically, so it has a nice ease in, ease out at the extremes. And by that we can just set the position nicely so it sits on the screen and it looks quite nice. Then we just set how far away from the middle of the sphere it goes, and that's pretty much it from there. I like doing it this way because it's not a set, a set layout for this is how it should look for 2, this is how it should look for 3, because this way it can be dynamic, and it's more mathematical, I suppose, as well, and it saves you having to do multiple work of the same sort of thing. If you're going to do 8 different setups of different varying options, then it can get tedious. Alright, so look, that's basically it. The file itself that runs all of this magic, this UI dialog, it does inherit from the dialog UI behavior, which is part of Yarn Spinner. So if you import it, you have a look at the example project, a lot of it can be just copied into your own script and modified. What they've got in there is very robust, and it just works brilliantly. So I've adapted quite a lot that they had in there, and then obviously put my own style and flair on top. And yes, I've got the parsing in there for the emotions and for the names and so on. So where to go from here is actually it's right on the screen here is run command. So the other cool thing about Yarn Spinner is you can also run commands from your line of text. And what I probably should do is open up the Yarn editor. I can sort of see what it looks like. So this is the exact string file that the game is using for the NPC. So spin it up. Here's the line of text. So as you can see there, the first part is the name. Okay. These little arrows here, they're simple options. So the other way that you could do it is if you're going to have an actual branching dialog, is you would link it then to another node, and you would say yes. So this option will link to another node, and then have a whole new branch of dialog. But since this is just a quick, simple example, I've just used this little shortcut here. Yeah, so it's quite that simple. But you can also run commands in the line of dialog. So we can have a command block that says, I don't know, move player 100 units to the right, or something like that. It will then pass whatever you have in that command block, and it will basically run a send command to the object that you tell it to, and it will then pass anything else as arguments into that function, and that can be very handy. So if you could imagine that you're in a branch of dialogue talking to an NPC that says, hey, I've just delivered all these things to you, that that NPC can then give you a reward directly from the yarn dialogue. So you wouldn't have to do any other code, wouldn't have to do any checks or anything like that. And that's cool. So that's my next step from there. So once I get that implemented, I may just do another update. But for now, I think that's about it. If there was any questions on yarn or anything like that, or if you'd like to go a bit more in depth, let me know, shoot me a message, and yeah, I might consider doing a more in-depth sort of thing. Yeah, look, definitely super handy. Yeah. Cool. All right, look, that's it for now. Enjoy yarn, and adios.